So in this video I wanted to share my opinions on DayZ Standalone, what I like about it and what I don't like about it. So this video might be a tad bit more serious than what I normally post. It might also be a tad bit rambly, but bear with me. So the idea for this video has sort of been floating around in my head for well over a year now. I just never really got around to making it, primarily because I thought it would just be met with a lot of negativity. But lately I've been noticing an increasing amount of negativity regarding the game, so this might be the opportune time to make this video after all. But before I say much more, the gameplay in the background is from Standalone.mp4. I decided to put a few hours into the game to get some footage for this video, and I actually ended up having a pretty good run here. Probably primarily was because I already spawned in with a weapon, so I didn't have to go look for one with matching ammo. There were also a bunch of shootouts, but apparently in this patch there is a bunch of loot explosions, so getting geared is not really that difficult. But throughout the gameplay, I'll post what kind of bugs me in the top right corner with a little red text box, and in the top left corner I'll post what I'm sort of thinking at the time. So that's the gameplay, but anyways, this video is gonna be up to August of 2015, build 057, so yeah, the game is still subject to change. Some of the things I might be complaining about might be changed in the future. I might update that with annotations or remove the video entirely, we'll see. But first I kinda want to touch upon this alpha argument. So whenever I see negativity posted about the game, there's always a bunch of people that just jump to the alpha argument, which is, can't say anything bad about the game because it's still an alpha. I kinda don't like that argument because the game is being sold for money right now, so if you post a fair complaint about the game in a decent way, then you should be able to just post that. On the polar opposite side of that, you have people that just say the game is shit and they don't explain why they think the game is shit. But if you have a legitimate complaint about the game and you post that in a respectful manner, I mean, that's constructive criticism, I would say. But before I get into what I like and what I don't like, I sort of want to touch upon my DayZ history here. So I am kind of a DayZ veteran. I've been playing this game, well, not this game, I've been playing the mod, various DayZ iterations since the summer of 2012. Which is over 3 years ago now. So we started off playing on public hives, but pretty soon we realized that public hives were not really that great. There was a bunch of hackers on public hives, hackers that would spawn in AS-50 TWSs, which was a one-shot kill rifle with a thermal scope that was really overpowered. So we moved on to a private hive, which was a lot better. And later on came the DayZ mod variations. We played Breaking Point, then DayZ I played a bunch actually, which is a pretty hardcore mod for DayZ. Also really well polished. Many people agree that that is actually the best DayZ mod out there. Also moved on to DayZ Overwatch, but after that DayZ Standalone came out. So in the beginning we played that a bunch. It was good fun. There was a bunch of new things to sort of check out, but there wasn't a heck of a lot to do actually. At the time there was only 4 weapons in the game actually, the Mosin, the M4, the FNX and the Magnum, so aside from checking out the new features and some slight changes to the map at the time, there was not actually a lot to do. So I still kept playing the mod, and the summer afterwards I actually started playing Overpack, which I still play today, but I still kept playing Standalone at that time. But I will admit that I have not actually played Standalone consistently for the last half year plus. It's primarily just been because I haven't had a lot of time to play it. But I have kept up with the development, so now that we got my life story out of the way, I'm going to move on to the things I don't like about DayZ Standalone. So I'm going to divide this into 3 categories: major frustrations, Arma frustrations, and minor frustrations that will probably get fixed. So the first and the last are pretty self-explanatory. For Arma frustrations, it's more of things that are Arma engine related, as well as things I sort of notice, having played Arma 2 and Arma 3 a bunch. So anyways, to start off with major frustrations, so first of all the zombies. The zombies in the Standalone and the mod are completely different, but the purpose they serve is kind of what I want to touch upon here. So in the mod, the zombies were not really a threat. In Standalone, they aren't either. But the thing about the mod is that you can actually use zombies to track down players pretty effectively. If you enter the town in the mod, you would spawn a bunch of zombies. So if you went running around, they would all track you down pretty much. And if you enter the building, they'd follow you inside, slowly, forming no real threat. If you had a pistol, you could take them out easily. But the thing is, if somebody was on the outskirts of the town, if they see zombies in the town, they would know somebody's there. If they see a bunch running down the street, they would also know that they're tracking down a player actively. As well as the fact that you pretty much had to shoot your pistol if it's a one-way building you were inside of, so The zombies in the mod greatly helped drive PvP. You could really use them to track down players, and this is something that the standalone really does not have. Very rarely do you see zombies running after players, and if you see a bunch of zombies in the distance, it doesn't really tell you much of anything. In fact, that's one of my main gripes with the standalone. It's really difficult to track down players, because there is a bunch of melee weapons as well. If players do decide to take out zombies, which is not even necessary anymore because you can just close doors, they will just use a melee weapon instead of shooting a pistol, so there's really no reason in the standalone to shoot your weapon, aside from wanting to kill an animal at range or a player. So much of the combat in the standalone is based upon bumping into other players at high loot areas, or hearing somebody fire at somebody else and then just joining in on a fight. It's definitely a lot more difficult to find players in the standalone than it is to find them in the mod. And the second major frustration I have with this game, it's to do with people turning into stick figures at range. So player models load in very differently in the standalone than they do in Arma 2. In Arma 2, I would say it's actually too easy to spot players at range because every object sort of becomes blurry and starts disappearing at range, whereas in the standalone, people also start disappearing. In Arma 2, that's really not the case. In Arma 2, you can clearly see players beyond 500 meters, but in the standalone, it does something weird. If you have low objects detail, people actually turn into little stick figures. The thing is, you kinda need to have low objects detail in order to get FPS in cities. It's kind of a trade-off when you think about it. If you turn up your objects detail too high, you know you will be able to see players better at range, as well as being able to see through windows in cities. But then the trade-off is that you will have low FPS in cities, meaning that you might be less effective at CQB. Now, a middle ground with that is changing your object detail dynamically, but I kinda just find that to be annoying to have to switch between low and high object detail. Also, I changed it in the CFG files, so that's not really an option for me either. There's something uneasy about staring down the Northwest Airfield and knowing somebody could be sprinting across on the other end and you would not even be able to see that due to your object detail being too low. As well as the fact that that kinda puts players that have a lower NPC at a major disadvantage. Honestly, I don't really have a solution for this, nor do I know whether or not it will actually get fixed at some point, but I do find it to be an issue. I will say that in Arma 2 it's way too easy to spot players, and I've not really played Arma 3 enough to really judge that, so I don't have a solution here. And thirdly, being unable to pick up items and items disappearing when you drop them inside buildings is still really clunky. I mean, in Arma 2 it's pretty clunky as well, but at least there you could create a loot pile where everything would be contained. In the standalone, you'll have these occasions where you see an item on the floor and you cannot pick it up. Unless you pull out some magic tricks, sometimes you're able to pick it up, but sometimes it's just impossible. Then dropping the items, that's pretty self-explanatory. You just drop an item somewhere and it just disappears. Or it's somewhere else entirely, but it's not really consistent and still really clunky. Then I have a major gripe with the reloading system in this game. So I do like that this game has magazines as well as individual rounds, but I find the reloading in this game to be absolutely horrible. My primary example is when you're using an SKS or a Magnum. If you want to reload that thing, you have to go over to your weapon, right click it, eject the rounds, then find some new rounds in your inventory, drop that onto your weapon, and then select load ammo. So if you're in a gunfight and you want to reload, it's not really something you can do that easily. You kind of have to run away entirely and pull that maneuver off. So some people say that that is more realistic, and that sort of mimics real-life reloading, but in all honesty, and I will say I've not shot any real-life weapons nor gotten shot at in real life. I mean, I live in Europe, but I would like to think that in real life even a civilian would know where they place their handgun rounds, and if they get shot at and they want to reload their weapon, they'd simply be able to eject the shell cases, find the ammo in their pouch, pocket, or whatever, and just place them in there instead of having to fumble around with mouse clicking. So I don't really find it to be that realistic. Then again, some of these things are my personal preference and things that I don't like, but I find the reloading system in this game to sometimes be absolutely horrible. Now, a solution for this is to spawn more magazines. The Magnum issue could simply be fixed by having a bunch more speed loaders around, but the thing is, magazines seem to be really rare in this game. SKS clips as well, so if you get an SKS, 9 out of 10 times you're gonna have to reload it really awkwardly, but if you have a clip, you can simply press R to reload, which is just wonderful. I prefer that a bunch more than having to go through my inventory and do it that way, but again, maybe personal preference. Then lastly, and I sorta just already touched upon this, but it's the difficulty of finding a weapon with the right ammo type as well as the magazines. So in the DayZ mod, if you found a weapon, there was a good chance that there would be magazines around that weapon, and you'd be able to use it. The thing about the Standalone is that the weapon spawns individually, so even if you spend about an hour looking around for a weapon, you might spend another hour looking around for the right ammo type for that weapon. And then depending on what weapon it is, you might also need to find a magazine to have that weapon be any use to you. Say the CR Carbine or the Sporter 22, those things are pretty worthless without a magazine. Unless you just want to keep chambering it, but then with the chambering you get back to the issue of the clunky reloading system. So I kind of find that to be an issue, so I would prefer it greatly if weapons were to spawn with magazines and actually have a decent chance of spawning with some ammo. But again, some people might find it to be more hardcore if weapons are really difficult to find. I don't, I kind of just find it to be boring, but again, you might not agree with me on that. But that's the major frustrations out of the way, so now we're going to move on to Arma frustrations. So something which I find to be annoying is that there's no offline environment to really test out these things. I mean, finding certain things is kind of difficult. Say you have no idea how a landmine works and you find one in-game. You have no idea how to operate that thing and you might blow yourself up doing it. So if you were to have an offline editor environment like the Arma games have, you'd be able to test it out on your own. Safely, you could say. Now I know there's no editor because, well, they want to decrease the amount of hackers, but the thing is there are still hackers in the game. So ideally I'd like to see an editor. I know it's probably not going to happen, but that's also sort of coming from an Arma person. Because when you think about it, DayZ Standalone is just a really locked down, buggy version of Arma. And secondly, the static animations. Now these have actually gotten a tad bit better compared to the mod as well as Arma 3. You can now run around with your inventory open and do a bunch more things and actually cancel animations. But there is still a bunch of static animations. But for example, if you have a melee weapon equipped and you raise that melee weapon to swing it, if you then run around and you try and unequip that, you have to go through a static animation. Whereas if you had that axe equipped in such a way that you cannot swing it, you know, you have it lowered, then you can actually run around and switch it out. So sometimes it just gets clunky that way. So they've definitely already gone a long way with this, but it could still use a lot of improvements, definitely. And then lastly, desync. So this is definitely an Arma thing, and it will probably never fully get fixed, but it's getting killed around corners, it's getting teleported back, it's eating food and having to wait for it to finish, and then it doesn't finish. There's things like that. But it definitely gets more and more noticeable in DayZ Standalone with picking up items and having to perform player actions. These things start to get to you a tad bit more than just playing Arma. But then we move on to minor frustrations that will probably get fixed at some point. I think some of these things might actually already be fixed in 058, which is the current experimental build. Yeah. But as I said in the beginning, this will only touch upon 057. So the first thing is body sliding down a hill. So in the Standalone there is Ragdoll, which is a step up from Arma 2 definitely. But when you shoot somebody on a hill, they have a tendency of sliding down like it's a water slide. Which wouldn't be so bad if you were still able to pick up their gear, but the thing is you're not. Yeah. So if you run to the body, you have no gear option. And if you run back to the weapons, there's no gear option there either. So in the end you shot somebody, they do a belly flop and their gear is gone. Which is kind of annoying. Then it's the random server sounds. So this has been in the game for a really long time. 058 will supposedly fix this. I cannot confirm this, but this really bugs me. So if you run around randomly, you hear like sodas opening, ammo combining, zombie sounds. Now these are not directional, these are global. But the thing is, it distracts you first of all, and secondly, sometimes you will phase out sounds that are actually directional, so it will mislead you. And this has nearly got me killed sometimes. But me doing YouTube a lot, it definitely bugs me maybe a tad bit more than the average person, because I listen to so much sound. I pick up on these cues, and I just hear them, and they just slightly annoy me every time I just hear a random sound happen again, and then randomly again. And you hear another soda open, just faintly, but it's weird, because there's no sodas around. Yeah, this is a list of major points I had here. There is still some other points. Definitely if you watch the video in the top right corner, there is some things that kind of bug me there too. All these things combined can create for us sort of a frustrating experience when playing. Definitely compared to DayZ Standalone, the mod feels a tad bit just smoother and it just seems to work a tad bit better. It's definitely a lot more simple, but it seemed to click just a lot better. But to not have this video just be a video of me complaining about things, I will actually touch upon some things I do like about the game. So first of all, the clothing system, that's definitely a major one. Compared to Arma 2, it's night and day. You can actually pick up individual pieces of clothing, as you know, put them on and actually make your character look unique. The clothing is also really high detail compared to A2. That's definitely a big step up here. Then the weapons and attachments. This system is great, all the weapons look really nice so far. There's a bunch of attachments you can attach to your assault rifles, nice scopes, everything is nice. I do actually like the magazine and individual round system and the chambering system. I just find it combined to be a tad bit clunky, which could be done better. Maybe a separate key to chamber a round and a separate key to reload a magazine into your rifle. But as I already said, I find the sliding over things onto your weapon with the mouse to be just a clunky way of doing it. Then the food and disease system, that you individually have to open cans and all that stuff. The diseases actually affecting your character. This is definitely a big step up from the mod, although I think the vanilla mod improved upon some of these things. Although I will admit I have not played the vanilla mod for a long time. But it's definitely a big step up in the standalone compared to the 2012 version of the vanilla mod. It's still getting there, but it's definitely good so far. And then lastly, the map. It's definitely also a lot better than the default Chernarus. It's got some new towns, some of the things are updated with better textures. If you look at the road textures, that's definitely a lot better than vanilla Chernarus. And then of course the buildings. Almost all the buildings right now are enterable on Chernarus Plus. On Chernarus Vanilla, maybe about 5 buildings were actually enterable. So I suppose in conclusion, the vision for a good survival game seems to be there. It just still has to be polished a lot more. But not all is dark and muddy, there is still a future out there, so a new renderer is supposed to come out, it's on the roadmap. The release date is not entirely sure, but this is supposed to fix a bunch of issues, as well as mod tools. So the thing about the DayZ mod is that there was a bunch of spin-offs which would allow you to play your own version, which you like more. Many people like Epoch for the building system, and because it's more persistent. PvP mods, and then there was a bunch of mods that would just completely overhaul the game, like Origins or actually Aftermath. Not many people remember that one, but that was a pretty good mod actually. It just never took off, but coming from more of an Arma person, the community can definitely get really creative and create some really wonderful things, so mod tools would definitely allow for some interesting things, as well as increase the longevity, maybe even fix some issues. But most of all, Bohemia is a reliable developer, so they seem to care about what they do. So I do have some faith that this game will get there eventually. It just might take a really long time. But we'll see.